New Zealand, a stunning country located in the southwestern Pacific Ocean, is often labelled as empty or uninhabited due to the vast stretches of unpopulated land. However, this description is far from being accurate and fails to do justice to the immense beauty and significance of New Zealand. The rugged terrain, snow-capped mountain peaks, dense forests, and crystal-clear lakes of New Zealand are a sight to behold. It's as if nature has put on a grand show for us mere mortals, leaving us dumbfounded and humbled. It's a land that deserves our respect and reverence. Despite being one of the most naturally stunning places on Earth, only 15 to 20% of the population resides in the larger cities, leaving much of the land largely untouched. But this does not mean that life does not exist or no activity occurs in these areas. These regions are home to diverse domestic and wild animals and natural ecosystems that perform vital ecological functions. These unpopulated lands are also used for farming, forestry, and other land uses. The history of New Zealand is very complex and painful to remember. The Māori people were the first to settle in New Zealand for over 800 years, and their connection to the land is deep-rooted in their culture and spirituality. Over time, they have grown to have a very profound sense of respect for the land and its natural resources, which should be an example to the whole world. The Māori people established small communities throughout the country, living in harmony with the land, its resources, and themselves. However, the arrival of European settlers in the 19th century marked a significant turning point in New Zealand's history. This arrival heralded the spreading of epidemic diseases that decimated the Māori population, wiping out entire communities at a time. The Europeans also brought with them a new way of life, culture, and spirituality that was often at odds with the way of life passed down from one Māori generation to the other. This led to a full-blown conflict that led to the displacement of the Māori people from their ancestral lands. The displacement had long-lasting effects on the Māori population, with many Māori forced to live in poverty and deprived of their cultural heritage. For centuries, this displacement has caused the Māori people to face systematic discrimination, oppression, and marginalization at the hands of colonial powers and the New Zealand government. These discriminatory policies and practices led to significant social and economic inequalities between Māori and non-Māori communities in New Zealand. The confiscation of land, the removal of children from their families, and the imposition of European cultural norms and values even further contributed to the destruction of Māori communities and culture. Many Māori communities experienced abject poverty, unemployment, and poor health and medical resources, and were greatly misrepresented in the criminal justice system. It also caused many Māori people to struggle to provide for themselves and their families, causing people to migrate to a better and safer environment. That even led to a significant decrease in population over time. These policies also had very long-lasting impacts on the mental health and well-being of the Māori people. The loss of their land, language, spirituality, and culture has contributed to intergenerational trauma and a sense of displacement, separation, and disconnection from their roots and identity. It's difficult to imagine the pain and suffering that the Māori people must have experienced during this time. I don't think anyone will find it easy to adapt to a foreign way of life, culture, and tradition at the expense of their own cultures and traditions. The decrease in the population of the Māori people that occurred as a result of these policies is a tragic reminder of the devastating effects that colonialism can have on indigenous populations. Another contributing factor to the population decrease and the amount of inhabited land it has is its geography and climate. New Zealand has two main islands, the North Island and the South Island. It is also very vulnerable to natural disasters, including earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, and severe weather events. Other environmental factors like climate change, pollution, and resource depletion have also affected the population size in New Zealand. Climate change has also contributed to rising sea levels, increased frequency and intensity of extreme weather changes, and changes to ecosystems and natural habitats. These disasters in the past have had devastating impacts on communities, causing loss of life, damage to infrastructure, and displacement of populations. Pollution, particularly air pollution, also became a significant problem in some areas of New Zealand, particularly in urban areas. Air pollution led to negative impacts on health, such as respiratory problems and increased risk of cardiovascular disease. Resource depletion, particularly concerning water resources, also became a source of concern, particularly during periods of drought. This water scarcity had significant impacts on the productivity of agriculture and food production companies, and on communities that rely on water for drinking and sanitation. The geography and climate of New Zealand have also taken a major hit on its economy. Much of the country's land is mainly used for agriculture and forestry, which can be labour-intensive and require a significant investment of time and resources. With rugged mountains, dense forests, and challenging terrain, it is almost impossible for people to settle in the communities, establish businesses, or build mega infrastructures. As a result, these industries will not be able to support large populations in certain areas, leading to a decrease in population over time. Over time, all of these factors have also led to long-term consequences, such as increased poverty, loss of livelihood, mental health problems, and social inequalities. Even access to essential services like healthcare, education, and employment opportunities have been significantly limited. The most significant factor that has played a role in the reduction of the population size of New Zealand is migration. If you've been paying attention to the factors I talked about earlier, you will notice that those factors caused people to migrate. Lots of young and able-bodied people have left the country in search of better opportunities elsewhere, resulting in a brain drain that has depleted the country's skilled workforce. This has had a particularly devastating effect on rural communities, where the loss of young people has led to a decline in population and a lack of resources. There is a limit to what middle-aged people and senior citizens can do that will significantly improve their economy and living situation. A lot of these migrant communities have faced exclusion and fierce social inequality and discrimination. This has in turn led to a divided and unequal society because some communities are thriving while others have been left behind. On the positive side, the migration also means that these areas remain largely untouched, allowing nature to flourish undisturbed. Today, the population of New Zealand is spread out across both islands, with a small percentage living in the larger cities and the bigger percentage residing in the smaller towns and rural areas. Migration has also brought diversity and cultural richness to New Zealand. People from all over the world have come to the country, bringing with them new ideas, cultures and traditions, and ways of life. This has contributed to a vibrant society that celebrates differences and embraces multiculturalism. As humans, we need to find a way to strike a balance between development and conservation. Preserving natural ecosystems and protecting indigenous rights should take priority over economic growth and housing shortages. New Zealand is a land that should be cherished and preserved for its natural beauty, cultural heritage, and its unique flora and fauna. It is only in recent years that the New Zealand government began to acknowledge the harm and effect these discriminatory practices and policies have had on the Māori people and New Zealand as a whole, and taken steps towards reconciliation with the Māori people. The Treaty of Waitangi, signed between the Māori chiefs and the British Crown in 1840, is recognised as the founding document of New Zealand and forms the basis of the relationship between the Māori people and the government. The promotion of the Te Reo Māori language and the establishment of Māori seats in the parliaments have also been steps towards the reconciliation and healing of the Māori people. The treaty guarantees the Māori people the right to their land, forests, fisheries, water, and other necessary resources, and the right to participate in decision-making processes that affect their lives. However, the Treaty of Waitangi has not always been upheld by the government, and this has caused many Māori people to feel their rights are being ignored and violated. There is still much work to be done to address the historical injustices faced by the Māori people and to ensure that they can fully participate in and benefit from the society and economy of New Zealand. This includes addressing issues such as land ownership, access to healthcare and education, and representation in government. Despite the challenges faced by the Maori people, their culture and traditions continue to thrive and play a crucial role in the identity and character of New Zealand. The haka, a traditional Maori war dance, is performed by the national rugby team before each match and has become an iconic symbol of the country. Maori language and customs are also increasingly becoming integrated into mainstream society, and efforts are being made to preserve and promote Maori culture for future generations. I don't think describing New Zealand as an empty or uninhabited country cuts it. Instead, it should be recognised for what it truly is, a precious and magnificent piece of nature that deserves our respect and protection. More work needs to be done to strike a balance between the development of the lands and the conservation of nature, to ensure that the land, its way of life, its cultures and traditions, and its language remains a treasure for future generations to come. And that's a wrap on today's video. Let us know in the comments section how you would have coped if you were living in New Zealand. We hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new today. And as always, keep exploring.